Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ICU. We have a repeat guest here today. The reason is because she's so awesome and she has so much to offer in terms of knowledge on the nervous system. And yeah, I'm so excited. So we have Grace Secker here. Grace, welcome back to ICU.
Thank you, Callie. Happy to be here and really excited for this episode. I think it'll be a great one.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Grace, if you don't, that's crazy at this point if you follow me on any social media platform. But Grace was on the podcast back on episode 59. So if you want to go check that out, that was like really early in my nervous system regulation journey. So that was when I was starting to buy into it. So it's just very interesting how far we've come in a span of like 40 episodes or 2 years time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you've been very helpful to me personally on my journey of overcoming not like bladder symptoms specifically, but anxiety type symptoms and just like the most random symptoms that pop up, which we know are normal. But I know that you've been really helpful to my clients and a lot of people in my community as well. So I just gassed you up and let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. Thank you for that. Thank you. I love working with all of you here at ICU. I do. I very much so do. And I think this will definitely add a whole other layer to all of it.
Yeah. I guess first we should just have you do like a brief introduction of like why you are here to talk about the nervous system stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so if we have not met yet, I am Grace, obviously. I am a holistic licensed therapist and nervous system coach, and I specifically help people with chronic pain and illness symptoms. We call them neuroplastic symptoms. So any symptoms that you have that are not functionally founded, and you've been dealing with them for a long time and not a lot of shift or change, things like that. Specifically, obviously, IC, OAB, is a very common neuroplastic symptom. And a lot of the root cause is nervous system dysregulation and emotional repression. And so that is my specialty. That's what I do. That's my mission in the world, to let you know you don't have to suffer anymore. You don't have to be being told all the time that like, oh, we have no answers for you, or this is just how it is. It's not true. So
It's not.
no.
Like if I believe that I was doomed to suffer forever, like I still would be suffering forever. Like somehow along the way, I decided that is not true. I guess that came from within me, but for some people, maybe like this podcast helps them believe or like something out there. So I think that is like a major shift that needs to happen as like step one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you and I were talking about, okay, what topic is the best for us to talk about in terms of IC, OAB, anything related to the nervous system. And we kind of landed on food sensitivities, which I have noticed over my years being a bladder dietitian is a very, very hot topic in the bladder health world. And the reason for that, I mean, I'm sure I can't be 100% correct, but I'm going to assume the reason for that is because we have these restrictive diets like the IC diet or just bladder friendly diets that you go to the doctor, you get diagnosed with some bladder condition, and you're handed this diet list of all of these foods and beverages that you can no longer have anymore. And I think over the years, we now have this misconception that like everyone with IC or OAB needs to follow this diet or else you're not going to get relief. And yeah, so I think that's kind of how we landed here. Any thoughts on that, Grace, before I continue?
I'll say this is that first, that I'm really happy we're having this conversation because your background, because you are a dietitian, so you can speak from that place, and then I can speak from the nervous system component. Also, I didn't mention previous to this specialty, I've been an eating disorder therapist for many years, And so what I have noticed is a really big overlap in any kind of disordered eating. When you've gone through chronic health issues and been told specifically to be on this diet so that your symptoms will go away, and then so many people are just left there thinking that's their life, and then we develop a lot of sensitivities around that and fear. So there's a big overlap here, and I'm really also very passionate about like understanding that and helping people get it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And what I see when I work with my clients who are following these restrictive diets, and some of them it's just a couple months, some of them it's years that they've been eating the same like 5 to 10 foods. And we see a lot of nutrient deficiencies due to a lack of variety in their diet. We see unintentional weight loss. And the
Mhm.
biggest thing that we notice is the development of food fear or stress around eating. You start to view these foods we're told not to eat as quote unquote bad or dangerous for you. And that has a whole impact on your nervous system that we will get into at some point in this episode soon. But I thought it could be helpful for Grace and I to share our journeys with food sensitivities because we're both at a place where we have overcome food sensitivities. I won't speak for you, Grace. I'll speak for me. But are you open to sharing your journey a little bit, Grace, with food sensitivities?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I'm very open. Oh, yeah. So, yes, tiny bit of history before is that I do come from a place of, I do have a previous eating disorder. Do not deal with that at all anymore. Healed through it, work with people around it. Um, and so maybe around 5 years post that, was feeling pretty good in that area of my life. I developed other chronic health symptoms, and one of them was food sensitivities. And I mean, it started with, I would have some histamine reactions, anywhere from kind of like migraine type headaches to gut issues, a lot of bloating, gas, all the things you can do happen in your gut. And it started with, I didn't actually know it was food, actually, until I got some food sensitivities testing and food allergy testing, which I cannot speak from a professional place on this, but that could be a whole other episode
It
on
could
doing these
be.
kinds of testing because it is very harmful. I'll speak from my experience. When I did that and it showed on this list all these foods that my body was reacting to, that now I was told, oh, you're sensitive to these foods. You have intolerances to these foods. Well, I was like, oh, shit, that's my problem. Okay, well, if I eliminate them, then I'll be better. And I did, and it kind of, I mean, kind of helped a little bit, did somewhat, and then also it didn't. And then over time, I developed more and more and more. I kept reacting to so many more foods that probably for about a year and a half, I was down to eating like 10 different foods. And even that still sometimes like I would flare, I would react. And so my world got very small. I was fearful of everything. I was actually getting married at the time. I couldn't even eat the food there at the reception. It was really bad until I started to realize, or I had a very like breakdown moment where I remembered the work that I did with my chronic pain, mind body healing work, and nervous system stuff. I did not connect the dots here. Once I connected the dots, and I was like, oh, maybe that work can also help in this area. Because I knew, kind of like you said, I kind of knew within this isn't right. I knew too. I was like, this is not, I don't know what's happening, but something is not right here. I do have a history of disordered eating. I don't feel like it's the same thing. It's not the same thing right now. I'm not afraid of this the way I used to be. It is a true like fear nervous system response, but I couldn't understand it. Finally, kind of clicked the dots and was like, oh, okay, I think it's my brain stuck in danger mode. And then I started learning more about the nervous system and how it can impact so many health different symptoms. And once I started to apply the concepts of brain training and nervous system regulation, I know this sounds a little extreme, but to be honest, within about 2 weeks, I started eating most foods again. And I say that just with the caveat that it's because I have done this work previously, that for me, it kind of just kicked into place. That's a fast timeline. And that didn't help every single symptom, but for food, it really did. So I am very passionate about telling people food is not the enemy. It's not the problem. we can change the way food digests just by the way we think about it and feel about it. And that's very brief, but we can get into that later. Yeah.
Totally. I can relate to a lot of those last points that you said. Like, there are times where I'm eating and then I get nervous and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can feel it's just not digesting. And it makes sense, if you're in that nervous system, upregulated state. So yeah, I can relate to that. For me, my journey very different, but there are similarities. Like, I had bladder symptoms my whole life. I didn't discover the IC diet until some doctor along my treatment journey gave me the handout, and I was in college. I saw coffee, alcohol, tomatoes, chocolate on that list, and I was like, oh my God, like, what the hell am I going to do? There's no way. And yeah, I started cutting them out. And there was a time where the things I cut out, I replaced with other things. And then, long story short, I discovered those other things were also technically not bladder friendly. And then I was like, I can't win. And it really didn't help my symptoms all that much to restrict those items, but it did give me something to latch onto where I had that similar thought to you of like, well, if this is what it takes to fix me and feel better, I will do that. I will do anything at this point. So I went a couple of years just avoiding these things, drinking tea in the morning when I wanted to drink coffee. Um, I was definitely sensitive to alcohol at a certain point, and then for me, I just gave up. Like, I threw my hands in the air at one point because I was just so exhausted with all of it, and I started eating and drinking anything I wanted again, and my symptoms literally didn't change. So for me, that's what it took, just kind of like an exposure therapy type situation. But I definitely had food fear for a while there. I definitely had nutrient deficiencies, and it was a struggle. So that's my experience. I know everyone listening, like, not everyone, but probably a lot of you have a similar situation. You might currently be stuck eating a very limited diet, and I mean, we're here to tell you that that is not what the rest of your life has to be like. I can eat and drink anything I want at this point. I don't go crazy with things like alcohol because that's my choice. But Grace, are you able to eat whatever you want now?
Yeah, food I have absolutely no issues with. My one thing that my body seems to hold on to sometimes, I go through phases with it, is coffee. And I just have to kind of retrain and like soothe myself and work with it a little bit. But that's truly the only thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, getting into the beginning of all of this and the relationship between like food and the food sensitivities and the fear. I mean, when someone is getting that IC diet handout and they're starting to see like X, Y, and Z is
Mm-hmm.
bad or unsafe for me, like what's happening in our brain and our nervous system?
Yeah. So I'll actually even say right before that or years before that, however long you've been in these symptoms and you end up finding this IC diet information, your nervous system's already in a state of fight or flight freeze, which is what we call the stressed out nervous system. So what happens is that it's essentially like your cup overflows. And when your cup's overflowing, any kind of stressor in the environment, whether that is food, emotions, work at stress, relationships, whatever, any kind of stress, physical, mental, and emotional that come into play, it could be tiny. If you're already overflowing, your body's going to react and think it's dangerous. And so when we connect the dots or we're told that, okay, well, these foods are dangerous to you, and you start to feel them or you start to think that and recognize it, your brain categorizes it. Okay, these foods, dangerous. So if they come in contact with my body, if I ingest them, we're going to reject them. And that might sound a little simplistic, like really, it's just because I'm telling myself it's dangerous. But there is a real true response to that. There is a doctor called Mark David. Yeah, Mark David, who's the author of The Slow Down Diet. It's not a diet. That's just a really old title, an old name. um, but he's done a lot of research in digestion, and he talks about how it clearly shows that the way someone thinks about their food, the way they feel about it, how they're eating, if they're eating in a really stressed state, literally changes the digestion of the food. It does not digest well. And so that's kind of where I'm coming at it from, of yeah, we get really stuck in these loops of not only that have you been told probably about the IC diet that these are bad foods, but also there's so much rhetoric and information in the world, online, in society about what's good and what's not good and what's healthy and what's not healthy. It's really hard not for our brains to grab onto those things. Um, I'll add one more layer to it, because also when we label things as good or bad, especially food, when we eat the bad foods, we then have a shame or guilt response. We are bad for eating that. We're not good enough. Oh, we couldn't control it. We couldn't, just will our way and not eat the thing, So then we have a shame response on top of that. And shame is like poison to our nervous system,
The
creates
amount
more
of
stress.
comments I see on social media groups, support groups for IC, it's like, I ate this and now I'm flaring. And like, you can just feel the shame coming off the page. And it drives me crazy because it's not your fault. And
Mm,
also, like, the food may not even be the culprit here.
yeah. I had a client recently tell me, ugh, I hate this, but I want to say it out loud so people understand if they've come in contact with this. But they had a practitioner one time, and one time, by the way, I fully value and love all practitioners that understand the nervous system. If you're functionally minded, wonderful. Um, this particular one was telling my client, she had IC, was telling her to keep a food log. She would go over the food log and she would tell her, I'm flaring. And she'd say, oh, well, it's because you ate these two foods together. So you probably flared yourself, essentially. And I mean, this happened like every time she saw her. And my jaw just dropped. And I was just like, oh, no,
Grace,
no.
that's
So
how I
she
feel
was
every day.
like, yeah, she was just in this state of fear and shame all the time because she couldn't get the diet right. Or like she combined two foods that weren't supposed to react, or they reacted in her body. That's, y'all, if you're listening to this, that is not effing true. I cannot stand it so much. It's just so harmful. By the way, she can eat any food that she wants now. We've overcome that and she's happy and not flaring.
I gotta do a whole TED talk on this because I just can't stand it. The IC diet has weak research supporting it. It's not like a diabetes diet that we have all of
Yeah.
these like research studies supporting. It's like we're not going off of a lot, and everyone is acting like there is like all of this research behind it. So let me just tell you this right now. There is not. There's some like questionnaire based studies, but those aren't strong when it comes to like the hierarchy of research, which we
Mm-hmm.
did talk about in a previous episode. Quick plug. But basically, like, that's where I get really frustrated because it is such a big misconception in our community, and not everyone is diet sensitive. So I think where we take this next is we have two different groups of people. We have the people who aren't diet sensitive, and we have the people who do have some diet sensitivities,
Mm.
because I don't want to leave those people out in what I'm saying. So I don't know, which way do you think we should go first here, Grace?
We're already on the diet. So for diet sensitive people,
All right.
yeah.
So, with people who notice that they have diet sensitivities, I mean, where do they even start? Because what we're saying here is that you can overcome diet sensitivities. Okay. So, what would the first couple of steps look like for those people?
First, I want you to look at, okay, a couple different things. One, what is your history with these sensitivities? Have they just recently started? Have they been going on for a while? Were you told about them and then you became sensitive? I want you to kind of like, what I'm looking for is essentially like holes in this so that your brain can recognize that it doesn't have to be true to be sensitive to these foods. Um, Now, I will say this: if you have a true allergy, like celiac, nut, dairy, something like that, I am not saying, I'm not claiming that you can rewire that. Some people might say that, but that's not my take. I'm saying that intolerances and sensitivities that your body is now reacting to when maybe you never used to. That is evidence that you can shift that, because that's just a new neural network that's happened in your brain. And so we can change neural networks. So really, your body's gotten into a pattern of reacting. We can change that pattern. It is shown time and time again. We do it all the time. So that's what I really want you to understand, like grab onto this information, this education, that first and foremost, like you said, the IC diet really doesn't have much merit to it. And two, not only can we rewire your patterns, there's countless people in the IC world that have gotten over their sensitivities and are fine now. So I'm helping you kind of build that evidence for your brain to recognize it, to be like, okay, yeah, I don't have to be sensitive to these foods. So that would be step one. And then two, really start to understand what's happening in your nervous system. You can go back and listen to my first episode when I talk about it. And to really recognize not only your full-on nervous system, what's happening with your diet, but also the digestion, what I talked about. The way that we think about food and fear food really changes how we digest it. So your homework, if you will, is to really start to understand, okay, start to introduce maybe one or two foods. And you also tell me how you approach it too, because but this is usually what I say. Introduce a couple that are activating, like, they're on your no list, but maybe they're not your like super fearful foods or drinks, whatever. And start to work with calming your nervous system before you eat them. So you can use some type of breath work. You can use some brain retraining phrases, which literally are like, hey, I'm safe. I'm okay. It is completely okay to eat this food. And I know that might sound like, okay, really, are those words going to work? I just had a client tell me that the other day. She was like, honestly, when I heard you tell me to tell myself I'm safe, I kind of rolled my eyes. And she was
That's
like,
exactly what I would do.
yeah. And she was like, but I tried it when I was about to have a panic attack and it calmed me down and like it actually worked and my flare went away. And I was like, yeah. So try it. It may not work the first time, but keep practicing. It does take consistency. It takes practice because we're changing a pattern. And when you're eating food, slow down. Slow down with yourself. Take it in. Don't be distracted all the time. I mean, there's so much we can kind of talk about around how to eat, right? It could be a whole other episode, but start to implement around a time where it isn't super stressful. Like enjoy the food that you're eating. Try to, at least. I'll pause there and see what you want to, interject.
Yeah, I think that's all really great, and that's essentially like we recommend in Road to Remission to test one item at a time. And we also suggest starting with something that it's kind of like it makes you a little nervous, but you feel pretty confident that it will go well before you jump into like the coffees and the alcohols and all of that,
Mhm.
because those can be scarier for some people, and it takes time to work through any sort of fear that you're experiencing and like feel safer about food. I think things that you've taught my clients that really helps them with reintroducing is, like you said, being calm when you're eating it, but also like doing the visualization practices
Mm.
beforehand. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, actually, yes, I can't believe I forgot that. So thank you for saying it. That actually visualization I have found to be helpful in every scenario, but specifically with food, specifically with our digestion. So what I mean by that is you're taking a few breaths before you eat. You can close your eyes or not, but first I'll say our brain, when we visualize something, our brain doesn't always know the difference between that versus actually reality and what's happening. And that's shown time and time again with studies, especially around like sports and stuff. So when we visualize our brain connecting to our gut, and I'll just tell personally what I do is I will first and foremost, I'll picture my brain like calming and soothing. Sometimes it's on like red and high alert when we're in the stress response. That's kind of how I visualize it. So I'll visualize it calming, maybe washing over some blue color like water. And then I directly connect that to my gut. And I actually Googled a picture of like, what does my bladder look like? What does my gut look like? What does my brain look like? So I can have that, very basic pictures, but it can be helpful. Um, I like to picture little like stars or little cartoons, like being happy, jumping around in my gut and my bladder when I imagine this food or this drink entering my body. My body's inviting it in. My body is feeling nourished by anything I'm eating. I'm literally talking anything. It could be anywhere from a vegetable to a jelly bean. It is healthy and happy and lovely for your body. So you're visualizing your body digesting it in a really wonderful way. It's like invited and excited for this food. Um, yeah, that's an example.
Yeah. And visualization works for things other than reintroducing food. I always
Yeah.
recommend it for people nervous about traveling. Like, I feel like it could be so helpful. And it's easy to do. Again, like you said, a lot of this stuff feels like, is that really going to help me? But it's like, yeah, if you're consistent with it and you start to believe over time, like, yeah, it can totally be helpful. And I can give client examples. Like, I have so many clients who overcame food fear through visualizing and doing these like deep breathing methods and having those affirmations of like, this is safe, this is nourishing to me. Like, there is evidence, there is proof that this works. So I guess all we're asking is that you give it a chance.
Yeah, exactly. A chance. It doesn't have to be like, oh, 100% I'm bought in, let's go. It's shown time and time again, too. We talk about this in pain reprocessing therapy. You don't have to be 100% bought in. You just have to be open, willing to try, and yeah, be consistent with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, there are some people with food sensitivities that have just come to accept that this is what they're sensitive to forever. And I just wanted to remind all of you, if you're here, that that isn't true. Like, we want you to come at this with an open mind. Like, you can overcome this. And I just really hope that this episode inspires people to try
Mhm.
something or at least do a little bit of research into it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's really, really, it's so big that a lot of people don't even realize it's a thing necessarily. Like they're a little choosy around food, but it's normal to them. I can't tell you the amount of times I've talked with clients and even, halfway through us working together, they just kind of sidely mention something about food. And I'm like, wait, we didn't talk about this before. Are there things you're avoiding because of the fear? And they're just like, well, yeah, because it just, doesn't work well with my body. So it's just normal, right? But it doesn't have to be
Normalize it.
normal. Yeah.
Do you ever get clients who are like, yeah, I have food sensitivities, but I'm not stressed, or like it's not related to that?
I'll have a few that are like, that kind of what you said, where it's just become like they've accepted it. So it's not like they're high anxiety and stress around food. They're used to cutting out these certain things and it is what it is. So
I
that's
guess
kind of what I find.
let me
Yeah.
rephrase, sorry,
Okay.
that don't feel fearful. Does that
Around.
make more sense? Like, people with food sensitivities, but they're like, I don't feel fearful about these things.
Uh, I don't get that very often. No,
I
they're
get it
usually
on
thinking.
occasion with
Yeah.
people,
Hmm.
and it's just really interesting to me. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Is there a different emotion, or is there just flat out no fear?
Mm-hmm. I
Mhm.
wonder what it is about the maybe the type and the amount of foods, right? Because yeah, some people truly just get used to not eating something, and it's not a big deal because they eat all these other things. But there's some people that are really affected by it because not only is it normal foods everywhere that they have to avoid, but also that some they really liked, or maybe their partner loves it and they can't eat it, or it impair. Here's the thing: it impairs their life a lot more than maybe some other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with all of these food sensitivities and the restriction, like, you're not living the life that you want to be living. Like, you can tell yourself
Mhm.
that you are, but like, realistically, we want to eat the pizza. We want to have, I don't know, a drink of alcohol once in a while or coffee with friends. Like, it's just such a social thing in this
Mhm.
world that when you can't have these things, it becomes more difficult or you feel like really isolated. And that's not fun.
Yeah. And I think for some people, they might not realize how much it's impairing, even though it is, like you said. And maybe you're someone who is not opting to go out to eat, or maybe you're not even invited anymore because you always turn it down, but it's just become normal and you're used to it and you like to eat the foods that you eat. You're telling yourself that. But to your point, there is restriction there. And a lot of times we get stuck in patterns and we don't realize what could be better. What's more, in life. And food is culture and social and fun and joy and pleasure, and there's so much surrounded by it. So,
For
yeah.
sure. I love when I'm traveling to different places, just trying different local coffee spots. Like that's my thing. And I'm like, if I didn't have relief from my bladder, like what would be my thing? Or would I not have a thing?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. But I think the next step here is for when people are testing or reintroducing foods into their diet. Some of my clients, at least, they ask the question of, okay, I did have an increase in my symptoms. How do I determine if that was due to the food or was that due to like a nervous system response? And before I get your thoughts on that. I think there's a lot of people who assume food is the reason that they're flaring.
Mm.
And I want to caution you guys because that's not always the case. When I'm working with people, it usually is related to some sort of stressor or anxiety about something, or even like a positive emotion. Like I see a lot of people make the mistake of just assuming. So those are my 2 cents. Grace, you have the floor.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you clarified there because that can be very common. And I'm actually going to say why it's common that because there is so much rhetoric around food and you've been told a million times, eat this, don't eat that, that we just assume that is the cause of everything. And so sometimes it's more of just a coincidence, if you will, that we ate these things, but also flared. And if we look at what's going on around you, the experiences, the people, your work, whatever you're doing in your life, sometimes it takes a little bit of a deeper look because countless times people are like, I don't know, it's fine. Everything is fine in my life. It's not if you're here. It might sound irrational. It might sound a little dramatic, but that's your unconscious talking. So our unconscious is talking when our nervous system is dysregulated, and our unconscious is not rational at all. It is dramatic. It's like a little kid. So when you, on the surface level, think, well, I don't know, it was a normal day at work, your little child unconscious is reacting to a lot of things. So with that, a lot of times food is not actually the thing. It's something else going on. But what I'll say with that too is that sometimes food really is the trigger, if you will, but it's not the reason. It's not the cause. So food, I mean, I can fully say from my experience, like I would eat food and within 15 minutes I would know whether I was reacting or not. And so I was like, well, it has to be food. Like it's obvious. It's right here in front of me. Um, but your body's only reacting to food because it's overwhelmed and your cup is flowing from all the repressed emotions, the stress, the mental health, the trauma, whatever it is underneath the surface is causing your body to react to the food because it's quote unquote easier to have a physical issue to try and solve or control. But obviously that's not really the case, or else you wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be talking about this.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
my responses to food, well, we'll do quotes to food. They used to be the next morning. I would call it like a bladder hangover from whatever I ate or drank the day before. But now that I am where I am and I can reflect back, like I'm sure it was stress. And I am someone who clenches my pelvic floor when I'm stressed. So I'm sure it was just a whole lot of that. And I'd wake up, pelvic floor muscles and bladder are not happy. I'm probably dehydrated. This is me back in college,
Mhm.
chronically dehydrated. And so, of course, it felt like I was peeing fire. Like, it really, maybe the foods were making the urine a little bit more acidic, but like, that wasn't like the root of the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say this because it's tricky that when we're talking about, I mean, even the things that you mentioned, like, okay, dehydration, I was clenching my pelvic floor, like we can go down a list of all the reasons that you've probably thought about a million times of what's wrong, what's the cause, like going through your list of like what could be. We're not saying those are not reasons. They're actually happening in your body. You are having physical responses. We're not saying it's just your brain's making it up or you're making it up. Again, the root of that, though, it's not the food. It's not I mean, obviously dehydration is not great for our bodies, like be hydrated. But that is not causing your chronic symptoms. It's not the actual root cause. Yeah. Does that make
Yep.
sense? I'm saying?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the people who you test the foods and you genuinely do have food
Mm-hmm.
responses, a physical response to the food, whether that be your bladder or your gut or whatever, like where do those people go from here?
So if you're listening to this, wonderful, because you've just now had all this information that really that test. I actually talked to um, Crystal Austin, who I know you've had on here too, about this. I had a podcast episode with her. She helped me really understand the like demystifying those tests, essentially the food sensitivities tests. Um, And so if you've had that, just know that that is not okay, this is it, this is fact, this is life, this is the rest of your life, this is your body. It's going to react to those foods. Our bodies go through so many changes, and it doesn't mean you are allergic when you have sensitivities to foods. It means you have a stressed out nervous system, and it is the root cause. So I would go back to what we said before. Start with understanding the education behind all this and really what's happening in your brain and body. And start with reintroducing a food, hopefully with a supported, trusting professional and guidance group along the way. Because you really do not have to be stuck in that. If you've had testing, it doesn't have to be true. I know that's hard to hear,
These
but
tests
yeah,
are not evidence-based. Like most
no,
dietitians aren't recommending them because it's not ethical for us to recommend something not evidence-based.
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, when I think about my journey as a bladder dietitian, in the beginning, when I started out, I was definitely pushing the IC diet because I didn't have that experience under my belt. I didn't realize, all of this. I didn't know all of this at the time. And so I've done a complete 180 in terms of
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts about the restrictive diets that are out there. My program has completely changed. We used to start people by doing an elimination diet, and then like eventually they could do some nervous system like learning
Mm-hmm.
and stuff that you taught. But we recently, about 2 months ago, launched the new version of the program. And I mean, you, me, and Beverly, we spent the past, 6 months figuring out what the best structure was for people. Okay, most of our clients are coming in highly dysregulated. We get a lot of like perfectionist, people pleaser, type A type of people whose symptoms are starting out of nowhere. But when we dig, there's some sort of trauma in their past, or there's some sort of something
Mm-hmm.
that triggers it once you dig deeper. So we decided that the first 6 weeks of Road to Remission is solely dedicated to nervous system education and practices. And Grace put together the most amazing set of modules, and we have them drip 1 week at a time, so it actually forces you to do the work. And I'd love for you, Grace, to talk about like what went into that. Um how did you determine what to teach? And then, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how is it helping people?
Yeah. So in a way, I mean, similar to you, like my journey with even just specifically this work has shifted and changed over time. I mean, when I first created, I don't remember exactly. It might have been like maybe 3 videos for you or something a couple years
It
ago.
was 3
Okay.
longer videos.
Okay. That's crazy to me. That's nothing like that.
Well, I know, and when we were
But
in the design phase and I still
yeah,
had those videos up in Road to Remission, I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait until we have this new stuff.
yeah. So really, I think it was just like a touching point for people. It was just like, hey, nervous system is a component. Do a few of these things. And that's great. I mean, I remember some people really found some help and relief from that, right? But over time, we evolve. And the way I practice, the way I understand it, I mean, there's just so much nuance and so many layers that I really wanted to, one, make it a little bit easier to follow because it can be a little overwhelming at first. We're kind of asking you to literally take a 180 of how you understand your body and your health. So it takes some time. Excuse me. And so, the actually kind of similar way I talked about how you start to reintroduce foods is we first and foremost start out with education. You have to take a driver's seat in your own shifting and changing. And so I want you to know, like, your brain needs to understand what's happening in your nervous system, what's happening in your brain, what is the evidence behind all of this, like, learn about it, and then start to track your own nervous system cues. That's why that's in the beginning, because you have to understand yourself before you can change yourself. So I honestly think that's a big bulk of this work is understanding yourself more, understanding your nervous system cues, knowing when you're in the stress response and what activates the stress response. Then I lead you into a few different areas of understanding how to shift out of the stress response and into we called it the green zone, the relaxation response. There's a combination of brain training tools, module, and then also somatic practice tools. So brain-based and body-based. In the psychology world and healing world, we call it top-down or bottom-up. And some people teach one or the other. I really like to combine both because, I mean, we are all one, right? So understanding yourself first and then learning how to shift out of that with different tools and skills and calming techniques is really the foundation, I think, for all of that. And then really understanding that this is a journey, it is a practice. You will flare. It's not a straight line of healing. Think about it this way: when you're learning some of this stuff, you're literally bringing to the surface the stuff, the emotions, the stress that your body has shut out for a long time. Your symptoms are the protective mechanism against what's going on underneath the surface. So when we bring all that up to the surface, your body's like, no, I'm going to send you more symptoms. So I always have to remind people of that when they're like, I'm in a flare and I'm so hopeless and it's never going to work and, spiraling, that actually that's normal. And actually, sometimes that means it's working. So that's integrated throughout all of it, but I also talk about it in the end of like, okay, what do you do when you flare, kind of a thing.
Right. I think setting those expectations is important because it's not going to be perfect. And
No.
it's so easy to want to have this like spiral when you're in those bad days, but I think having like a structured plan and a community and someone like you to ask like, okay, or just to lean on like how can I get through this, or just to say like you
Mm-hmm.
will get through this, you are okay, like that can be really helpful. And I think that's the missing piece for a lot of people. Like I can go and tell someone who posts on a Facebook group like I'm struggling with XYZ and I really need help. Like what helped you? And for me, it's like, okay, I got help through pelvic PT. So treating my pelvic floor, which is very tight due to my nervous system, but also regulating my nervous system. And they'll come back every time without a doubt. They always say, well, how do I do that? And it's like, it is just so hard to explain this.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have something like these 6 weeks of nervous system work in Road to Remission, like you have the structure, you included a workbook, which I'm so glad because it's like you're learning, but are we applying it, or how do I apply it? I think that was a really helpful thing for our clients. So I'm really glad you did that.
Yeah, that's a good mention of. I mentioned in the beginning that you need to understand education, but that's just one piece. you have to practice and put into place in the implementation of it. You have to be consistent with it. And your brain and your body will procrastinate and not want to do it. And that's totally normal. And this is not coming from a like, you have to force yourself to do it every day and shame yourself if you don't. It's truly more of a like, yeah, it does take practice and time. But it does take the practice of it, the experience of it. I have a lot of people come to me where they're like, I've tried this, or I've learned about this. I've watched all these videos. Like, I get my nervous system as a component. I don't know why it's not changing. And I usually find out that it's really, okay, maybe they've done a few mindfulness practices, but are they really doing the inner work? No, not so
Right.
much.
Right. Or people that are like throwing too much at it. And I learned through the pain reprocessing therapy workbook that the more you try to make your pain go away, the harder it is for it to actually go away, which
Yes.
is annoying as shit.
Yep. It is. It very much so is. But our
Yeah.
brains and our bodies are really smart. And if you keep trying to force it to go away and push it away and do all the things, it just makes more stress, which creates more
Yeah.
symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. And I think another thing that's helping our clients a lot while they work through those modules is they have access to you in our group chat. We
Mm-hmm.
have a monthly Q&A, which is like my favorite thing in the world because people are asking questions that I have and you give really good feedback. It's live. Like I think it is that missing piece that like we didn't really have before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Because, I mean, yeah, I can do videos all day long, but you have to make it fit to you, and you need questions and support, and we're not meant to do this alone. Like I would not be here today if I didn't have the support along coaches and therapists along the way for me. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't want to ignore the other group earlier. So when I was saying there's two groups of people, one
Yeah.
group is food sensitive, the other one is not food sensitive. So that essentially, like, they can kind of skip the step with the whole like figuring out the food tolerances and everything, and they can just dive straight into the education and the practices, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'll add this too, that actually that's evidence and of it in and of itself that food is not the cause. If some people are sensitive and some people are not, that's not sound sense like information. Um, so I every time I see some type of evidence loop, I have to point it out for people and be like,
Evidence.
yeah, like, hey, this is right, like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you don't see food as an issue for you and you haven't had to cut out, or maybe you did and you added it back and you're like, yeah, nothing's changed. Great. Yeah. Go straight into nervous system and you don't have to focus on that.
Yeah. Is there anything else we didn't dive into that you feel is relevant for this topic?
Um, Yeah, well, I'll say this one little piece is that sometimes when you are moving through or you're trying to introduce new foods, and we're basically telling you to eat food without the fear of it harming you, you also have to kind of look at like, are you also fearing it in any other way? Like societal pressures of fat versus non-fat, or protein versus non-protein, or like all those little things are also in there as well. So that impacts how, again, like you digest. So I point that out there because sometimes people will be like, well, that's a bad food. I know it doesn't really affect me, but that's a bad food. I really want you to take literally all labels of food away, good or bad. Again, I don't care if it is a
Diet
snack
Coke.
from like from the gas station, or like the most healthy salad ever. Like I don't care what it is. Take all food labels away while you're going through this process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All amazing tips here. So I guess like the bottom line that we want you guys to realize is if you are diet sensitive, it doesn't mean you're going to be forever. There are steps that you can take to rewire your brain and be able to eat and drink whatever you want again. Don't assume that you're diet sensitive. The majority of my clients end up not being diet sensitive. So there's a lot of hope. If you feel like you're stuck eating the same 5 to 10 foods, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you're feeling like you need more guidance and structure and support, that is where Road to Remission can really help you. It's a team of me, my support dietitian, Beverly, and then you get the touch points with Grace. It's really, I'm so proud of this program, like what it has evolved into, and our community. It's over 200 people now.
Mm.
Everyone is so supportive and they believe that they can get better and they lift each other up and they check in on one another. Like it is so freaking cute and like I love it. And yeah, we have it in the regular version with the support, and we also launched a version that is just self-study that only comes with the module. So if you wanted to like DIY all of this and learn from Grace and learn from me and Beverly, like you can totally do that. So I'll link those in the show notes, but I also wanted to give Grace an opportunity to tell you guys where to find her and also how to work with you.
Yeah. So you can find me over on Heal with Grace is my Instagram. I'm always there. It's always, I mean, it's also the name of my podcast, Heal with Grace. And I
Podcast is
share.
a 10 out of 10.
Thank you. I love it. I really do. Like, if I could just do my podcast and live a great life, and that'd be great. I share so many tips and tools on this. I kind of teach you, I mean, not fully, but I have my own program called the Mind Body Healing Method, which is a nervous system program to help you heal chronic symptoms. If you're someone that you feel like you have what I call whack-a-mole symptoms, where like you have IC, and then that kind of calms, but then you have migraines and they pop up here and like you have multiple different symptoms, my program is totally meant for that. To really help you understand you don't have to live with them anymore. In my podcast, I talk about all the learning tools that I give you in that as well. I also work with people individually, but my program is really where most people get a lot of all the juicy tips and tools and feedback and personal support.
Yeah. I've had clients work with you both one-on-one and in the group, and they rave about it. So you're doing something right.
Awesome. You too. I think I agree with you. I think the new R2R is amazing. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. All right, Grace, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I know that this is going to help so many people.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.